My name is Barbara Blood Rankin, and my connection to Bangladesh goes back to 1960 and 61 when I was here as a 10 and 11-year-old with my parents who were at the consulate. My father is Archer Blood, and who had two tours here, the earlier one that I remember more, and a second one right before the Liberation War. My father was aware of things happening. My mother was, I guess, pretty much in the dark because I recently talked to her trying to put her memoirs together, and she didn't know a lot of the things that were going to happen until practically she was ushered out the door and flown out, evacuated to Iran at the time. And my father was at the consulate. He was the consul general, and the war broke out, and the Pak army came in and started murdering East Pakistanis. He sent information back to the United States via telegrams because it was the only form of communication available to them. Washington, D.C., and the ambassador in Pakistan made light of what was going on, said that they didn't think it was really that bad. So the telegrams got progressively more and more concise and strongly worded, and he pretty much condemned the United States stand, which was supporting West Pakistan, which got him into a lot of trouble. He was pulled back to the United States, and had congressional hearings to talk about what really was going on there, and for which he was removed because he had dissented against American policy. The telegrams that went back to Washington were read by other Foreign Service officers in the State Department and applauded by many of them, and he wound up winning the Foreign Service's highest honor for disciplined dissent. So his career was pretty ruined after that. He was derailed from the career that he should have had, and that was an unfortunate thing. However, he was given a choice. He could have taken the American stand at that point, and which would have been the wrong thing. And he was a very moral man. And as he said, it was a black and white situation. There was wrong and there was right, and the only right thing to do was to do what he did, and he was willing to sacrifice his career for that. Well, one of the telegrams was considered the most strongly worded communique ever received by a Foreign Service officer, and it became known as the Blood Telegram. In part, it read, "Here in Dhaka, we are mute and horrified witnesses to a reign of terror by the Pakistani military. I believe the most likely eventual outcome of the struggle underway in East Pakistan is a Bengali victory and the consequent establishment of an independent Bangladesh." He argued strongly against pursuing a rigid policy of one-sided support to the likely loser. It always makes me happy to hear his name mentioned and remembered, and it's especially nice that Bangladesh has been so wonderful honoring him and making his sacrifice. When he did pass away, the Bangladesh embassy sent a contingent, I think it was of 5 Bengalis, to honor him at his funeral in Fort Collins, which meant a great deal to us. And later on, my mother and father had never discussed what they wanted to do with remains after they passed away. That had never come up. And my father's remains are in my mother's living room to this day, 8 years later. We had a discussion, she and I, about what she should do with the remains. And there were various options. There was Arlington Cemetery, because he had been in the Navy, putting his ashes in her hometown in New Jersey. And I suggested to her that because ashes can be put in several places, some of the ashes should be sent to Bangladesh because he is considered so highly here and he loved the country. My father never sought recognition. He was a very modest person. So I don't think he just thought that he had made the sacrifice and that was it, and he was going to move on to other things. He was very pleasantly surprised and felt bolstered that he had that much backing in the State Department by his peers. And I think he was quite overwhelmed by the Bangladeshi degree of appreciation.